football is not merely a sport, it is a shared cultural phenomenon that brings people together while fostering rivalries steeped in history. Among the many intriguing matchups in English football, the encounters between Arsenal and Aston Villa stand out as a narrative of tradition, competition, and memorable moments. These two clubs, rich in history and legacy, represent different facets of English football, yet their meetings have consistently captivated fans across generations. This essay delves into the historical rivalry between Arsenal and Aston Villa, tracing its origins, milestones, and the evolution of their competitive spirit. Origins and early encounters. Aston Villa Football Club was founded in 1874 in Birmingham, making it one of the oldest football clubs in England. By the late 19th century, Villa had established itself as a dominant force, winning multiple league titles and FA Cups. Arsenal, on the other hand, began its journey in 1886 in Woolwich, South London, as Dial Square, later renamed Royal Arsenal, and finally, Arsenal. Though Arsenal was a latecomer compared to Villa, the club quickly made its mark, joining the Football League in 1893. The first meeting between Arsenal and Aston Villa took place in 1904, when Arsenal, then known as Woolwich Arsenal, faced Villa in the First Division. Villa, a powerhouse at the time, secured a victory, but the match marked the beginning of a competitive relationship. Throughout the early 20th century, Aston Villa often had the upper hand, bolstered by a formidable squad and their status as a well-established club. The interwar years, a shift in fortunes. The interwar period witnessed significant changes in English football, and the Arsenal-Villa rivalry evolved accordingly. In the 1920s, Villa continued to enjoy success, but the 1930s belonged to Arsenal. Under the management of Herbert Chapman, Arsenal became a dominant force, revolutionizing English football with innovative tactics and strategies. Arsenal won 5 league titles and 2 FA Cups during the decade, cementing their status as one of the country's leading clubs. During this era, the matches between Arsenal and Aston Villa gained prominence as clashes between two clubs with contrasting styles and fortunes. Arsenal's tactical brilliance often prevailed over Villa's traditional approach. However, Villa's determination ensured that these encounters were far from one-sided. The rivalry grew as both clubs sought to assert their dominance, each victory adding another layer to their shared history. Post-war era, revival and rivalry. The post-World War II era brought new challenges and opportunities for Arsenal and Aston Villa. Arsenal continued to thrive, winning the league title in 1948 under manager Tom Whittaker. Aston Villa, meanwhile, experienced a period of decline but managed to rebuild in the 1950s, culminating in their 1957 FA Cup triumph. The 1950s and 1960s saw both clubs navigating periods of transition, with their encounters often reflecting the unpredictable nature of football during this time. Matches between Arsenal and Villa became closely contested affairs, showcasing the resilience and competitive spirit of both teams. Despite fluctuating fortunes, the rivalry remained a highlight for fans, as each game carried the weight of history and the promise of exciting football. The 1970s and 1980s, new beginnings. The 1970s marked a significant period for Aston Villa, as the club began to rise again under manager Ron Saunders. Villa's resurgence culminated in their 1981 league title win, followed by their historic European Cup triumph in 1982. Arsenal, meanwhile, experienced mixed fortunes during this period, winning the FA Cup in 1971 and 1979, but struggling to maintain consistency in the league. Encounters between Arsenal and Aston Villa during this time often reflected the contrasting trajectories of the two clubs. Villa's attacking flair clashed with Arsenal's disciplined approach, creating memorable moments for fans. The matches were characterized by intense competition, as both teams sought to assert their identity in an era of shifting dynamics in English football. The Premier League era renewed rivalry. The advent of the Premier League in 1992 ushered in a new chapter for English football, and the rivalry between Arsenal and Aston Villa adapted to the modern era. Arsenal emerged as one of the league's dominant forces under the management of Arsène Wenger, winning multiple league titles and FA Cups. Villa, meanwhile, established themselves as a consistent top-flight team, although they struggled to replicate their earlier successes. Matches between Arsenal and Aston Villa in the Premier League era have been marked by high-scoring games, dramatic comebacks, and individual brilliance. One notable encounter occurred in December 2012 when Arsenal defeated Villa 2-1 at Villa Park with a late goal from Santi Cazorla. Another memorable match was the FA Cup final in 2015, where Arsenal secured a commanding 4-0 victory to lift the trophy, with goals from Theo Walcott, Alexis Sanchez, Per Mertesacker, and Olivier Giroud. Modern-day rivalry. Tradition meets ambition. In recent years, both Arsenal and Aston Villa have undergone significant changes, with new ownership, management, and playing philosophies shaping their identities. Arsenal, now under Mikel Arteta, is rebuilding as a competitive force in both domestic and European competitions. Aston Villa, under the leadership of owners Wes Edens and Nassef Sawiris, has invested heavily in players and infrastructure, aiming to re-establish themselves as a top-tier club. The modern encounters between Arsenal and Villa continue to captivate fans, blending tradition with the evolving nature of football. A recent highlight was Villa's stunning 3-0 victory over Arsenal at the Emirates in November 2020, showcasing their attacking prowess and tactical discipline. Conversely, Arsenal's ability to bounce back in subsequent matches has reaffirmed their resilience and determination. Memorable players and moments. Throughout their shared history, Arsenal and Aston Villa have produced numerous memorable players and moments. Arsenal legends such as Thierry Henry, Dennis Bergkamp, and Patrick Vieira have left an indelible mark on the rivalry, while Villa greats like Paul McGrath, Peter Withe, and Gareth Barry have contributed to their club's rich legacy. One of the most iconic moments in the rivalry occurred in 1998, when Arsenal's Dennis Bergkamp scored a breathtaking hat-trick against Villa, including a goal widely regarded as one of the greatest in Premier League history. Another unforgettable game was Villa's 4-3 victory over Arsenal in 1994, a thrilling encounter that showcased the unpredictability and excitement of English football. If you're really like it, please hit down button for subscribe